Hey guys, welcome to episode 18 of Trek Live. This week's episode, we're going to be talking about death in Trek. With me to do that is my amazing co-host Bill. How you doing this morning, Bill?
Pretty good, Dan. How are you? It's early for you.
Yeah, pretty
How you
early.
holding up?
Pretty early, but it's definitely good because this past week it got up to 106 during the day. So I'm glad we're
I don't,
doing it early where it's
yeah,
cooler. Yeah,
I'm not sure you would survive like a 3 o'clock
no, I would,
stream in
yes.
your current. Yeah, I don't think it would be good.
Maybe in the
Um,
wintertime, but not right now.
yeah, cool.
Yep.
Well, I hope that this topic is more fun than it sounds. Death in Trek.
Yeah.
Has kind of morbid, obviously, dark uh, vibes coming from it, but I think it's an interesting conversation. Trek dives into this a lot. We've had a lot of character deaths, main characters recurring, like one-off guest stars who come in and die. It's been done really well. It's been done really badly um, over the course of Trek, and I know, you know, Dan specifically really wants to talk about you know death in TV in general and how that might affect Discovery, and so it should be an interesting conversation. There's been news about Discovery and wanting to model itself after some popular TV shows today, maybe a little bit as far as this goes. So it's a current topic and something that I think we're going to be discussing as um, Discovery gets off the ground and gets
Mhm.
off and running. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are definitely interested in this topic because it's this week. Just on Twitter, it was just
yeah,
hard to keep up with one
yeah,
bunch of people trying to talk,
it's true.
wanting to talk about this topic. So
Yeah, it
excited
was
to dive
interesting.
in. Yeah.
People were chiming in with stuff that I didn't even think of, like that just totally didn't even occur to me, like character deaths, guest stars, and such. You know, Rob, who's in here right now, who's just dropping by, unfortunately can't stay as he usually does. Uh, Gave a huge dissertation on all kinds of
That was
stuff,
an
all
awesome
kinds of
list.
deaths. It deserves to be published on some kind of blog or something because it's great. And others along the way over the last few days have chimed in with all kinds of stuff too. It's been a really good conversation. So kind of fueled us, I think, coming into today, and I'm
Hmm.
hoping that we can capitalize
Yeah.
and get a good show going.
Yeah. Before we jump in, what have you been watching lately?
I watched a good bit yesterday.
Hmm.
I'm coming right down to the home stretch of Deep Space Nine. I have 4 episodes left.
Whoa.
Uh, yeah, and then
Yeah.
just 2 left of Voyager season 5. So I'm at the end of a season, the end of a series with DS9,
Hmm.
and thinking I'm probably going to finish it today. Uh, I'm in the middle of the like that last 9 episode like arc, kind of
Hmm.
9-parter at the end of the series for Deep Space Nine, which is awesome. It's really really good.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and Voyager. I watched one of your faves, Someone to Watch Over Me,
Yes.
yesterday. It holds up. It's as good as you say.
Yes.
You're 100% correct on it. I think um, it's it's got it all. Especially like the number one thing that stands out to me with it when I watch it in sequence, especially. Season 5 of Voyager is awesome. It's one of the better seasons.
Hmm.
But a lot of the episodes um, end with like a big kind of action sequence. They're all on the bridge. It's they have like their kind of standard you know fighting their way through a problem.
Yeah.
And when you get to Someone to Watch Over Me after kind of a run of episodes that is dealing, it ends with that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
Someone to Watch Over Me is like character driven, and there's no frills, there's no action. It's
Hmm.
just kind of a quiet character drama, romantic comedy. It's really refreshing. It reminds me of like TNG, uh, more freely kind of doing episodes like that don't rely on like a big action sequence at the end. So it feels special when you get to it, for me at least. And the two actors, Robert Picardo and Jerry Ryan, are just at their best. They're
Hmm.
great together. Their chemistry is awesome. It's funny. I love the dinner date scene.
That's a cringeworthy scene, though. It's
It
just
is cringeworthy.
yeah,
When she breaks the lobster and it goes all over, like
yeah.
it's slapstick funny. It's great. It's really
Mhm.
good. It gets to, and that's the other thing. Voyager's not a show that gets to often kind of like stretch its comedic legs and be funny
Mhm.
for an extended period of time. Like there's banner, there's funny moments here and there with the Doctor
Mhm.
and Neelix and Paris. Like, but this is an episode that kind of leans on the comedy, and I think it really works. And
Mhm.
um, I like the ambassador. Like everything about it works for me. I think it's a classic. I think it's
Yeah.
one of Trek's best.
Yeah.
Um, so I was thinking of you as I was watching it and
Yeah.
thinking about how right you are, and it's great. And I'm looking forward to actually kind of. I love doing the overlap, like going back and forth watching two shows at once. But
Yeah.
this is going to be the first time starting like next week that I'll be doing one show at a time with just the end of Voyager.
Mhm.
In quite a while, I've been overlapping for a while, so
Yeah.
kind of looking forward to that. What about you? Where are you?
So I just jumped back on the rewatch. So I just watched Judgment.
Yeah,
Um, that's the if you guys don't know, it's a Star Trek Enterprise episode where Archer gets put on trial. Um,
by the
and
Klingons. Right?
by the Klingons, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's definitely not like the best episode ever, but I
Yeah,
really enjoyed it because I love the exploration of Klingon culture besides
yeah,
the warriors and the battles and stuff like that. So I think that's what I love most about it, for sure.
yeah. I totally agree. Everything you said. I don't think it's like a top of the line classic or anything.
Hmm.
But the exploration of um, different kinds of Klingons
Hmm.
is really interesting. We don't get a lot of that.
Which
And
which we could see in Discovery. So
indeed,
who knows about that?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also kind of like the editing in it too, like the structure. I think it's kind of outside the box with, um, the playing with different perspectives. You see it from the Klingons' perspective, and then you see it from Archer's, and
Hmm.
I kind of like that. It's different.
Yeah.
It's not, a straight line, kind of episode. It messes around with some stuff. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
Glad to hear that you're back on it.
Yeah.
And
I took a pretty big break for a while.
yeah, I did the same thing in the middle of the summer. I had like a 2 week crazy period where I was doing all kinds of stuff, and I took a breather, and
Hmm.
it helped in the end. Like,
Yeah.
getting a little break from it, and
Hmm.
yeah, so it'll pay off.
Yeah.
So I guess to start this topic off, we're going to do a pretty simple, like best and worst, big character death, and then we're going to talk about some other stuff that comes to mind. We could go on and on and on if we tried to talk about like all kinds of these. So we're going to try to whittle it down to a few and talk about some others that come to mind quickly, and then we're going to go a little bigger picture with some stuff leading into Discovery and how TV, kind of like I said earlier, is handling death typically. So I guess my first question to you, Dan, I guess let's start with the worst. Which character death do you think is the weakest? The worst example.
I think Trip's death is the weakest because I have like such a big connection with that character, and I really hated to see him go. But
Mm-hmm.
and it's not to say that like I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
still it would still frustrate me, but at the same time, if it's done well, it's okay and manageable. Um, but when it's not done well, and we'll probably get into this later, when it's not done well, it just doesn't make for a good um, story kind of storytelling device.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the worst is kind of like a tie, and I'll talk about the other one. But I totally agree with you. The Trip, everybody knows I'm a big Enterprise fan. I love Enterprise, and
Yeah.
Trip's a big part of why. And it feels just tacked on. It doesn't feel earned. They're doing it just to get an emotional reaction out of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think just trying to end it on an emotional note, and it's just flat and false. And we talked about it in our finales episode, I think, a
Mm-hmm.
good bit.
Yeah.
What a kind of failure it is, and I kind of went off about it. So I'll kind of leave that there, and I totally agree with you. It's a cheap, as John, who's in
Yeah,
here, just said,
John puts
feels
it
cheap.
really well.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And the one I'll talk about that I think is like right on the same level of it, and we kind of talked about it last week, is Data, actually, for
Oh
me.
yeah. Yeah.
Data and Nemesis, I think, feels kind of the same way. It feels kind of cheap. It's very similar to the way they handled Trip.
Hmm.
I think it doesn't feel organic to the story. It feels like they needed to do something big and dramatic, and it feels like the actor wanted to do it to me, which he did. Like that's the truth. Brent Spiner kind of wanted to do this. He wanted to put a cap on Data that way, and wanted to kind of guarantee that he wouldn't have to play him again. He felt like he was getting too old for it. He didn't want to get dragged back into it again, which I understand. You know, he's an android. He shouldn't really look older as Brent Spiner looks older.
Yeah.
And that bothered Brent Spiner, and he knew it. Like, he knew he was aging, and it wasn't entirely credible for him to keep coming back and looking older, and he felt like it was diminishing the character. And so this was his way of, I guess, solving that. And it just doesn't feel, like I said, it feels cheap and tacked on, and it's a tricky thing. We're going to talk a minute about the best, and some other ones that I think kind of work, and this just isn't it. And I think, like I talked about last week, a lot of even the emotional impact of it, I think, is kind of blunted by the B4, the presence of B4.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having him there and dumping Data's memory into him, and then at the end, kind of seeing that it's kind of working, and kind of leads you to believe that, you know, Data as we know him is gone, but this new android is gonna you know, have his memories, and it's gonna be like Data again. So, you know, to do what, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but to do what, like, say, Spock, what they did with Spock and bringing him back, you know, it wasn't done immediately like this was. You know, that was an earned thing to bring Spock back. They went through a whole movie to do it, and to do what they did with Data, to kind of just kill him cheaply and to toss it in for an emotional reaction at the end of a movie, at the end of a series, for all intents and purposes, and then to kind of 5 minutes later imply that, oh, not really, is just kind of the ultimate cop out.
Mm-hmm.
So Trip and Data kind of go hand in hand for me, because they feel very similar. They feel tacked on and false and cheap, and done for the wrong reasons, I guess. So they're kind of one and the same to me. So I guess which one stands out to you as the best? Which I think is.
Well, the one that kind of stands out to me as kind of being the best, as you said, it's Spock's death. I think,
Yeah.
it feels right with the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you know, tacked on there. It's, I don't know. It's done really well, and I think that it's, you know, it's not overly dramatic. I think it's kind of the perfect combination, because I feel like, especially when you do have something like this happen, like a death in your series, like, it's hard to walk that line between overly dramatic and nothing. You know, it's so. I think they do it pretty perfectly in Star Trek 2. So
Yeah.
I think that's my best death for sure.
Yeah, and I totally agree. That's clearly, to me, like, the easy answer for the best, and it's because it's earned. The story of the Wrath of Khan is about aging and death, and
Mm-hmm.
Kirk cheating death
Yeah.
for all the years that you've seen him, and it catching up with him, and it's just it feels organic to the story in a way that some of these other ones just kind of don't. It's even consistent with Spock's arc in the movie. You know, Spock's arc of that movie is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and it's all about Spock, you know, walking the walk. It's easy to say that. It's easy to preach that, but when you're in a position to act on it and lay your life down, he turns around in his chair, thinks about it for a second, and gets up and does it. Very undramatically. He's like a guy on a mission, and he's doing it, and he's not going to be stopped. And that's kind of not only consistent with Spock's arc throughout this movie, just in this individual movie, it's consistent with what Spock's about for as long as we've known him. So it's kind of built to this for I don't know, what was that, 15 years or whatever since the beginning of TOS.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely the picture of how to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And what John Jones is citing, Nick Meyer saying you can kill any character you want as long as you do it well, and that's 100% the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
It's not about this character's untouchable, this character you can't do. It's got to be earned. It's got to feel organic to the story you're telling. It can't. The minute it feels cheap, the minute it feels like, oh, we're just kind of toying with the audience and we're trying to get you to cry at the end, and we're pulling it out of nowhere, I think it kind of diminishes the impact of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Spock's is not that. You know, some of the things I said about Data's death with the actor kind of wanting out. You know, there's always been talk that Nimoy kind of pushed for this too in the Wrath of Khan. But it's what John said. It's what Nick Meyer said. It's as long as you do it well. It's, you know, the reasons for doing it at the end of the day don't matter if you integrate it into the story in a way where it feels natural. So we definitely agree on that. We kind of even agree on the worst.
Mm-hmm.
But to kind of build off of that, which other ones stand out to you as either well done or not? Just kind of somewhere in the middle, not great to the level of Spock or terrible to the level of Trip.
Kind of in the middle. I'd say Dax's death, Jadzia Dax. Definitely in the middle. Definitely. I think it I think it kind of fits into the storyline of Deep Space Nine, but at the same time, I didn't want it to happen because she was such a beloved character. So
Yeah,
I go back and forth on that one. I feel like sometimes it's it's definitely a good one, but also I'm like I don't want to see her go, But yeah. What about you?
Dax is one that stands out to me as it's kind of a mixed bag to me. It's the way she's killed in the story is kind of silly to me. She's in the Bajoran shrine, and Dukat just happens to show up at that time and is kind of accidentally killed. You know, that's whatever. That doesn't stand out to me as like oh man, great death.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is, and I realize this is controversial to some, but I really like Ezra Dax in season 7, and some people complain, and I kind of agree that a lot of time in season 7 is spent developing her, and I agree with that. Some of the episodes in the middle of the season that focus on her are kind of weak and feel like overkill, swaying her way. But I like, in this run of episodes I'm in now, at the end of Deep Space Nine, I like the dilemma that it puts Worf in. I like again, it kind of capitalizes on the whole Trill idea of, the complexity of multiple personalities being passed along one entity. Ezri having to deal with Worf, and Worf having to deal with, this is Dax, but not really Dax.
Yeah.
Not the Dax he knew. Like, I think there's some good dramatic stuff that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what they did with it. I like how they capitalized on it. I like how it reverberated through the rest of the series, the last season. It wasn't something that they just kind of left behind and never addressed again. It was kind of a driving force behind the last season. So I'm not huge on the mechanics of how she died, and the scene that they actually did it in.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how the series played with the effect of it.
Yeah.
And I like her last scene with Worf in the infirmary and Cisco, and or Worf does the death ritual, and like there's some power to that scene. It's impactful. Like it's definitely an impactful death because she is such a good character, and it's unlike another one I'm going to talk about in a minute. It happens late in the series. It happens after you've really gotten to know this character, and you've seen her grow, you've seen her make friends, you've seen her get married. It's a major. It's got impact. It's got a big push. It's got a big punch to it. So it's effective. It's not perfectly done in within that individual episode, but I forgive a lot of those faults for what they did with it, for how they capitalized on it. So I kind of implied it there. What do you think of the Tasha Yar death? How does that sit with you? Well done. Do you not like it?
I liked it. I didn't think it was like overdone or anything, but I don't know. It's hard to do that I feel like especially early in the series.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I didn't mind it when I watched it. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you think about it. And there, I know definitely on Twitter there's been a lot of back and forth. Um, some people, definitely liked it, but other people were kind of on the other side of the fence. So
Right.
just curious.
Well, I I really like it, to be honest with you. I think because of how early it was in the show and because
Hmm.
of how much it's not like Dax. It's not like this is a really developed character, really
Hmm.
in-depth backstory, and so I think all they had to do to make it different, make it stand out, was to make it sudden and make it kind of scary, and
Hmm.
that's to me really effective because in life I think that happens. Here today, gone tomorrow. Unfortunately, it happens in life.
Yeah.
Every day people get in their car and drive somewhere and something happens.
Hmm.
And that's kind of represented in Trek through what happens to Tasha. It happens in the first like 10 minutes of the episode. They beam down to a planet. They're talking to this thing. They're trying to deal with a problem like they deal with every week,
Hmm.
and bam, she's gone. And like I said, that represents what people deal with every day, with
Hmm.
people not dying in like a big built up to expected kind of way. They're here and then they're gone. Um, and I think that's kind of it was certainly ahead of its time. I think TV shows are going to talk a little bit more about TV today and how death is handled, but I think TV shows kind of toy with that idea more now than they did certainly in 1987. Um, right, John Jones. It was like a red shirt death, but it was for a major character. Right.
Yeah.
They do that all the time in TOS. People beam down and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And they just did it here with a major character. Exactly. Um, Great point. But as somebody who's had that happen in my life, had somebody here and then not, like in the span of a day, in the span of an hour, um, I it certainly changed my perception of Tasha's death. It's made me appreciate it more as a real life thing that doesn't often get represented in TV, and certainly doesn't often get represented in Star Trek, um, in a way beyond unnamed red shirt beams down to a planet and
Yeah.
a Klingon throws a boomerang at him and kills him in the first 10 seconds of the mission. Like, you get that, but to have it be a character that you kind of know and like, and you see the characters actually have to deal with the impact of it is is nice to have, I think.
I think that what something that doesn't get represented as much is how dangerous or space exploration is.
Exactly.
So we kind of get like into the stigma where we just assume that everything's fine. They're
Yeah.
the cast. I mean the crew is gonna
Mhm.
stay together and not get you know not run into any danger and just always end up fine. It's always just got to remember that obviously space exploration is dangerous. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And that's certainly achieved there.
Hmm.
The fear of beaming down to a planet, not knowing that you're going to come back from that planet,
Hmm.
is not often explored in a way that we can really relate to through a main character, and that's kind of the one time that it's
Hmm.
really dealt with that way. Um, so I've always liked the way that they handled Tasha because it's unexpected and different. Um, and as I've aged and I've had things happen to me in life, I've grown to appreciate it more.
Hmm.
So I'm squarely on the positive side of it.
Yeah.
I don't think the episode that it happens in is necessarily like the all-time greatest. I
Hmm.
think I think it's a pretty good episode.
Hmm.
When I think of the episode, I think of her far more than I think of Armis, the big you know printer ink monster,
Yeah.
alien that does it. I think there's some interesting stuff going on there with Armis, but it's certainly not a production thing that holds up entirely well 30 years later. But what does stand out to me is the way that they handle her death in that episode,
Hmm.
and not even just like on the planet when it happens, when they beam her up to sickbay and you kind of see them scrambling and trying to bring her back, and
Yeah.
you see the looks on the characters' faces as they're kind of watching it, realizing it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. Um, yes, Jordan makes a great point. The way they bring her back in like yesterday's Enterprise
Yeah.
is perfect because it acknowledges what happened and it builds on what happened.
Yeah.
It doesn't try to completely erase what they did there, but it tries to add some meaning to it for sure. Like it's,
Like
I think yesterday's good.
yeah, like Spock's death too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't. They build off it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, another thing that I'll just kind of throw out there is just or like maybe kind of like a random thought. I think one of the better periods of time, as far as like how death was handled in Trek, was actually in Enterprise season 3 during the Xindi arc.
Mm-hmm.
I think seeing the crew. I don't know. One of the things that I like about that season is they wear it on their sleeve that people are dying around them. You know,
Yeah.
like the people are not making it through this mission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see the characters deal with it in kind of real ways.
Mm-hmm.
Those deaths are not really, they're not brushed over. They're not unacknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
They're not people just dying and, oh, well, there goes another security officer.
Yeah.
You see it impacting Archer and you see it impacting Trip when, you know, one of his engineers gets killed and towards the back end of the season. And there's a whole episode about him kind of dealing with that and
Mm-hmm.
trying to write a letter to her parents. Like I like how that season confronts that issue. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't gloss over the fact that there are people on the ship that aren't making it. You know, I think they deal with death in a kind of a real way compared to maybe how some previous Trek has kind of, unlike how some previous Trek has kind of taken it for granted
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, there goes another security guard biting the dust.
Yeah.
So that stands out to me, and I think early TOS as well, like early TOS, first few episodes of it even.
Mm-hmm.
When a member of that crew dies, you see how it impacts Kirk. Kirk
Yeah.
is like the air getting knocked out of him when
Yeah.
he's, you know, looking at a guy laying on the ground and on a planet somewhere. I think they really kind of play that up. It doesn't always last that way, like throughout the series. It's not always played that way. But I'm thinking of episodes like The Man Trap and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, some of the other early ones where
Yeah.
he really wears it on his sleeve when when just a random guy dies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not somebody that you know, but he's like, man, that's one of my guys. It's very, you can see how much it impacts him. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that too.
And I think when I see that, when they do wear it on their sleeve, and it kind of makes them more human and more relatable and stuff. So that's why I
Makes
think
it real.
that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how, I mean, you can kill characters that you don't really know and kill them maybe a little cheaply on an away mission somewhere. But if you see how it impacts, you know, the captain especially, it makes it have some impact. If it's Balance of Terror is another one. Correct. It's another one that you see how this stuff impacts him. That's how you make it have some value. That's how you make it not cheap. When you use it as a way to develop your captain or another main character. I think the captain's the one that's most credibly done. You know, if it's, I don't know. Sometimes you get it where, you know, you'll see, you know, a given character. I'm thinking of a Voyager episode actually that I actually kind of like, Ashes to Ashes, where Harry Kim. They come across. Remember, they come across this crewman who had died and was like brought back to life as an alien, and it turns out that Harry was like romantically involved with her, but we never saw it.
Yeah.
Like that can have mixed results. That can kind of feel cheap.
Yeah.
That, you know, they're kind of retroactively giving a history to a character that we just never saw.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's the captain and the captain feels responsibility for his people or her people, and you see it impacted that way, I think that feels real and it feels worth doing.
Yeah.
That's how I think that's how it's done well in Trek when they do it that way.
Yeah.
But what about you? Do any others just random stuff, like anybody just stand out to you as like that worked, that didn't work? Not put you on the spot, but
I don't think so. I think that I definitely, I guess if you guys saw the thumbnail, Kirk's death. I don't know how you guys feel about Kirk's death, but I'm not a huge fan of Kirk's death, honestly. I wish he kind of would have went out in a different way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do
I
you think
like
of it?
his first death better than his second death.
Yeah.
I like him. I like him, getting his hands dirty on the Enterprise B and, doing his thing and kind of getting. It's not. I mean, it's not great, but that is kind of how I would envision, maybe Kirk going out is, saving his ship,
Yeah.
saving a ship. I think the stuff on the planet with Soren and bridge falling on him and stuff, I don't know. Like it's kind of similar to Trip and Data. I think feels kind of cheap, and it feels like they did it just to do it, and they did. They felt like they were obligated to kind of do that, I guess. And I don't know. It's not an easy thing to pull off. It's not an easy thing to do what they did with Spock, and especially Kirk. Kirk was a really tough one to do because they were trying to thread this needle of it's a TNG movie. It's supposed to be, the backbone of the movie is Picard and Data and the TNG crew, but we're also dealing with this Kirk thing, and we want to be able to kill him meaningfully. Like, how do you do that? How do you create an arc within this movie that would satisfyingly, off, the character in Star Trek, arguably, Captain Kirk. It was a tough one to pull off, and I kind of think it was probably a misguided decision to even try to do that.
Yeah.
At least the way they did, where he's kind of in the first 10 minutes and then he's gone until the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard thing to earn in that structure.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to tell a story that way. If they figured out some way to involve Kirk more throughout the story and have him be more involved and, develop some kind of an arc that goes throughout that movie with his character, I think it, maybe they figure out a way to make it work better. But I think my biggest regret with Generations is the need to include him at all. I wish they would have just let it stand on its own as a TNG movie, and not have to
bring in
not
Death
construct
as,
not construct the story to fit this desire to have Kirk in it and kill Kirk in it. I think it would have been a better movie if they could have just done something without.
Yeah.
Jordan saying that he always got a very 60s Cold War vibe off of Kirk's reactions in TOS. The implication of our boys' lives is important. So we must be thoughtful in our actions towards our enemy to prevent any loss of life. Yeah. Well thought out as always, Jordan. 100% true. TOS is certainly a product of its Cold War 1960s roots. And Kirk is a character that represents that time definitively.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other ones that I'll just throw out there real quick. We don't have to talk about them long, but give credit to Rob and some other people too. I think Tuvix was brought up a lot, actually. I can't discredit Rob. It's a lot of people bring it up, and that's an episode that we could do a whole.
Yeah,
episode.
That warrants its own episode.
Yeah,
because that's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, that's an episode that I almost like to have like a guest on who might have like a strong opinion, like one way or the other, because it's such a controversial. You can go so many different ways with it, and people feel strongly one way or the other. And I think that's the best conversation to have with an episode like that is to hear all sides of it. And but yeah, that's something that I think we'll be doing at some point in the future, is taking like maybe a little bit of a deep dive into Tuvix, the character of the episode, all that goes around it. But yes, that's definitely an interesting one to look at. And Lal from The Offspring, I heard mentioned a couple of times, and that's another one that is really well done and hits me every time I watch that episode. That's a really good character and a really good episode that it feels natural to me, like the way that plays out. It feels earned, and her death is impactful in all the right ways. So I think we pretty much covered all the main character deaths, over the course of the conversation. We cited our favorites and least favorites, and then kind of touched on pretty much everybody. So I know you have some things to say just about, death and TV in general. So gonna let you have the floor and maybe talk a little bit about
Yeah,
kind of what you
I'll
think.
just give my thoughts on that. You kind of touched on it. I feel like sometimes like TV show and movies feel pressured to use death as a tool
Yeah,
to create drama, and I think death is definitely overused. And that's why so people were kind of um, comparing Game of Thrones and Star Trek together. I think Game of Thrones is its kind of own animal and how it
yeah,
handles death. I think with Game of Thrones, it's more of because it was adapted from a book, they kind of have to follow that style and what they use in the book. But I feel like with Trek, it's not as set in stone, and they can do that. That doesn't mean kill off a character every season.
right.
I just would want to challenge people in the industry with making movies and making Trek to use death wisely.
Hmm.
And I think when I'm I agree that death is a powerful tool to use. I mean, they're incorporating it in Discovery as an actual character, and he can sense, um, you know, the coming of death. So I feel like
Hmm.
there's great ways to use it. There's also bad ways. So I think that, and it's definitely like playing with fire. So I
It is.
really want to, moving forward with Discovery, I feel like they got to use it wisely. So that's why I want to kind of, I don't know, get my thoughts out there on death for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think Game of Thrones is definitely its own animal. The Walking Dead is its own animal,
Yeah.
and those are the shows that kind of often get cited as these gutsy, ballsy shows that at the drop of a hat will kill a main character. And I don't know. I have mixed feelings. Those
I
shows kind of live and die off of like that shock value.
yeah.
And one of the things that kind of ties all these Star Trek shows together for me, and I hope Discovery captures it too, is this feeling of family. Uh, finding a family wherever you are. And
Hmm.
I think if you're under constant, as an audience, as somebody watching the show, you're constantly thinking about, at any moment one of these characters is gone, and you're just kind of waiting for one of them to go. I think it kind of maybe robs you of your ability to totally get emotionally invested in the group.
Yeah.
It leaves you on it keeps you on your toes, and that's good in a lot of ways for a lot of shows. But I don't know. I've always one of my favorite things about Trek is that you can fall in love with these characters over long periods of time and see them grow together. And um, it all comes back to what John cited Nick Meyer saying: you can kill anybody as long as it's well done. It's I hope they don't overdo it. I hope they don't make it a game where like at the end of every season somebody's got to go.
Yeah.
I think that's overdoing it. But if there's an opportunity to kill a character after their arc has kind of played out, and their purpose on the show is sort of run out, and it feels like a natural thing to do, then by all means. I'm conscious of the fact that this is a show that's going to take place in wartime. We're in a conflict with the Klingons. They're playing the Klingons up to be scary and ruthless and um, intimidating. And I think in a setting like that, they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to, not every character can, I think, make it through the entire series. I think they're going to have to knock some people off um, to sell this conflict, this war as real and
Hmm.
impactful. But it's all about how you do it. Like you were saying, it's as long as it's done properly, as long as it's done in a real way, and I guess the trick is not to do it too often, not to be shuffling cast in and out all the time.
Yeah.
Um, let us. I'm hoping that they let us get to know these characters, and um, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time, and I'm just
Yeah.
waiting for the character to go. And if there's one thing that I'm a little nervous about with Discovery, maybe it's that that they're
Yeah.
gonna overplay they're gonna try to mimic The Walking Dead and
Yeah.
Game of Thrones by feeling compelled to you know maybe 13 episodes is too long to go without killing someone. I hope they don't feel like they
Yeah.
have to do that.
Yeah, I
And
think
I hope they're.
I just don't want just like John said, don't have it become cheap. And I think sometimes it can become the writers become just lazy. Like
Mhm.
do it right, don't be lazy about it. And I think that if you don't do it right, it can kind of put a bad taste in the fans' mouth. Especially, I mean, for example, Enterprise. You know, I right
Yeah.
now I'm going through it. I'm enjoying it, but at the end, I know I'm gonna have a bad taste in my mouth, and
Hmm.
that kind of takes away from the show as a whole. So I think
It does.
I really don't want them to become lazy with death and cheap with that. But I have faith. I have faith that
Hmm.
they'll have.
Yeah. I mean, that quote came. I can't remember exactly where it came from, but oops. um, there was a quote that I think came out of Entertainment Weekly that said that they were modeling a little bit off of Game of Thrones and Walking Dead, and that's where a lot of this conversation is coming from
Yeah.
with us. And modeling after it to a certain extent is fine, and a lot of quotes can be taken out of context in the development of a show and these
Yeah.
kinds of things. So I'm not looking to like overreact to it and think, oh man, they're trying to copy that whole dynamic. Um, but I don't know. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see how
Mhm.
they actually use it, and
Mhm.
see how quickly they do something with it. Without, I don't think it can't be a spoiler because it hasn't happened yet, and there's no guarantee that this would happen. But there's a lot of speculation that the Michelle Yeoh character is going to bite the dust pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Although it looks like she's still shooting, so I don't know. I don't know if it's like there's flashback stuff going on, or
Yeah.
the story is going to take place in like 2 time frames or something. Who knows? We don't really
Yeah.
know. But I think a lot of people are kind of assuming that maybe what they're talking about with killing a beloved character is going to involve her.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
I guess the name of the game is just that it's all about how it's done. It's all about how it's earned and being opportunistic with it and not
Mhm.
relying on it, like you said. I think that's the
Yeah.
the the cardinal sin of it is to rely on it and to build your show around it too much. And honestly, I'm somebody that. Do you watch The Walking Dead, Dan?
I've watched a little bit. I haven't watched it all.
Me neither. Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched it. My buddy watches it religiously, and
Mhm.
I want to say I got through maybe the first 4.5 seasons with him,
Mhm.
and I enjoy it. It's fine. It's a good show.
Mhm.
It's well done. It's well acted. Everything about it's good. But the constant threat of characters dying and the negativity and not negativity, but just like I don't know the weight of I don't know it grated on me to the point where I was kind of done with it.
Yeah.
I needed a break from it because
Yeah.
it's like relentlessly
Yeah.
stressful and that's fine. Like that, there's something to be said for that, but it's hard to sustain that, I guess, for certain people. And um, I, I hope they don't go that way, and I don't think they will. I think everything I've heard from the people who are making it, it gives me good vibes and good feelings, and
Mhm.
uh, I don't think they're looking to go that route. I think they are going to be more liberal with it than the other shows were. I think we might not have the exact same 7 or 8 main characters in season 3 or 4 that we have right now in the beginning of the first season. I think that's probably going to be the case.
Mhm.
But as long as it's not, like I said, shuffling people in and out all the time, I think we'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah.
Um, any other thoughts on Death and Trek?
So
You kind of want
Jordan makes a good point. Um, he says, "I'm also bothered by the lazy character reactions to death. I loved
to, yeah,
Caldicott's reaction to his daughter's death. It was unexpected and fascinating, given the character's relation to the
yes,
murderer."
yeah,
Yeah,
correct. Totally agree. Yeah, that
that
whole the way that
totally
dynamic
agree.
played itself out. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the way to do it. When it's done in a way that impacts characters that are staying on the show, and it's not just a hey, look what we did, this person's gone.
Yeah.
That's when it's best, when
Mhm.
you see how it impacts the on the characters around the show. I think is the way to go. When are you guys going to do an episode on Discovery? We have with you. You mean the Discovery itself, the ship? I don't know. When we actually see it for real,
Yeah.
maybe. We've gotten really one legitimate look at it in the trailer, I
Yeah.
guess, like finalized in the show look.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Just to go off on a tangent, though, I don't think the
Mhm.
visual effects are done yet.
on Discovery,
Yeah. So if
yeah,
you guys like them now, just wait.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you assume that things like that are being tweaked and worked on leading up to the pretty much right up until
Yeah.
I don't know about right up until airtime, but we're still like 8 weeks out.
Yeah.
Um,
So and
so
that's one of the things that doesn't have to be like reshot or anything like that. It can
mhm.
be just
tweaked and
tweaked and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did you happen to watch? Let me just also kind of going off on a tangent with Discovery. Did you happen to look at or read or watch any of the panel stuff that came out of Las Vegas earlier in the week? Have you seen any of it yet?
I haven't seen any of the Star Trek Las Vegas panels. I've been kind of just brushing it up on Twitter and stuff like that, but I haven't like watched any of the panels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched the only one that I've watched was the one with the actors.
Mhm.
There's two actors who play Klingons, Mary Chieffo and Kenneth Mitchell,
Yeah.
and Wilson Cruz and Sam, I can't pronounce his last name, I'm not going to try,
Yeah.
play Starfleet officers, and they're really cool.
Yeah.
They seem like really good guys,
Yeah.
good people, good actors. And the most interesting part of it to me was listening to the actors who play the Klingons. They are really interesting, really dedicated. They know their stuff. Kenneth Mitchell like breaks out into Klingon, like Klingon language, like on a whim, and speaks it really well. Like
Whoa.
it sounds good. I don't know what he says. I
Yeah.
can't understand it, but it sounds like legit Klingon. It sounds intimidating and scary. So it's pretty cool. It's really I'd encourage everybody, if you haven't seen it, they are on YouTube in an official capacity. If you go to the official Star Trek YouTube page, those panels are all there, I believe. And I'm sure I'll get around to seeing all of them at some point. But the actors one, I made a point to watch, and
Yeah.
I think it's well worth an hour if you can spare it to check them out.
Yeah.
It's also really cool to see actors. Like I've watched a good bit of like
Behind the scenes and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even like these panels from other
Yeah.
conventions,
Yeah.
and to see different actors, different faces talking about Trek.
Yeah.
And it's kind of refreshing after all these years of having the same 5-6 casts.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. I really recommend everybody check them out. So you guys in the chat, John and Jordan, if you have any other character deaths that you want us to touch on, if any of them stand out to you as like really big, impactful, throw them out in the chat, and in the next few minutes we'll definitely respond and touch on them a little bit. There's so many. There's more than just Rob, but Rob immediately comes to mind because I was just reading them this morning.
Yeah.
But he cited like, I don't know, 15, 16 people.
Yeah.
Everything from people we talked about, Tasha, Dax, major characters, Trip, to one like Jetrell he talked about, and he talked about I think who else, the
Admiral Forrest.
Yes, Admiral Forrest. Yep. Ensign Jatal from Voyager. Like all these little one-offs, and that's the thing. Like it's the ones that get a lot of the, and I'm guilty of it. When we first started talking about this topic, the ones that immediately came to mind were the big ones. Spock, Trip, Dax. Big, huge main character deaths. But some of the best ones, some of the most well played ones, are the one-offs, like the guest stars who had really good stories and
Yeah.
Had deaths that were effective. The death of the NCC 1701. It's a deep cut, and it's true. It's
Yeah.
that is a major moment. Uh, what do you think? Did that have an impact on you?
I like the visuals on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I have a different perspective on that. When I saw it when it died, so to speak. uh, I was like, oh cool, new ship. Let's always, especially with the D also. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh cool, new ship. Um, so it's kind of like a bittersweet. Like I hate to see ships go, but also I'm like refit
That's
or
something new.
yeah, something new. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Which of the movie ship deaths, 1701 and Search for Spock, Generations with the D, or the Beyond, JJ Enterprise,
yeah,
which one do you think was the best? Which one do you think felt the most?
visually or just in like more impactful.
Both.
Um, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could do it just impactful because I feel like all of them have a certain level of impactfulness. But I think I like the D um, because they used practical effects on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love kind of you can see the detail and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I also like In Beyond. I think it's definitely it's a cool it's I mean it's cool to see it get torn apart, but
Yeah.
it's also cool to see like they carried on Kirk's love for the ship, even in the Covenant timelines.
Yeah.
He's like, he always got some life still in her and stuff like that. So I don't know. I like that they kind of they carried that love for the ship
Yeah.
into the Covenant timeline movies as well.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's
What
it's
about
tough.
you?
It's tough to pick for
Yeah.
me. Search for Spock is really iconic. One of my favorite shots in all of Star Trek is like the crew standing on that ledge watching the ship go up in the atmosphere, or come
Yeah.
down in the atmosphere. Like Search for Spock definitely works for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like a big moment. It feels earned as a big moment. And I think Beyond, because the story really crutches on that. Like the whole idea of Beyond is kind of robbing
Mm-hmm.
the crew of their resources and making them pull together and make each other their resources. Like
Mm-hmm.
take advantage of each other's skill sets and pull together and come up with a resourceful way to get out of that situation. Because of the way that story is constructed, Beyond, I think, is the destruction of that ship. Not only is it like visually really cool, like you said, literally seeing it tear apart, being torn apart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the saucer getting ripped off and
Yeah.
the cells getting torn off. Like there's
Yeah.
just really interesting, cool,
Mm-hmm.
different um, visuals going on there. But
Yeah.
it also, from a story perspective, is critical. Like it's not just done as a hey, we're doing it to do it at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
movie or to make it a big moment. The story needs it to work.
Yeah.
That is the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost kind of give the edge to Beyond, maybe because it works on all levels. Like
Yeah.
it's cool, different, interesting visually, and it is the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jordan saying that he enjoys how in the search for Spock and feels connected to Spock's death and adds to Khan's actions that get Spock back. Getting Spock back is going to take more than they initially envisioned. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that is true. I mean, the whole theme of the search for Spock is sacrifice and
Mm-hmm.
giving things up to save your friend.
Yeah.
So that it's thematically very much in line with it. That doesn't feel cheap at all to me. Like I've seen people say that. I've seen it on Twitter. People think that that's like a cheap,
Yeah.
but I don't. I don't think that's a majority view. I think I'm thinking of like one guy who I
Yeah.
saw say it. I disagreed with, but I don't think it's cheap at all. I think it's very in line with not just the theme of the Search for Spock, but Wrath of Khan too. hard to watch for you.
Yeah, it's
Are you
hard to
talking
watch.
about? Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if he's talking about Search for
Beyond.
Spock or Beyond or.
Beyond certainly makes sense because it is kind of like watching limbs get torn off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but I certainly didn't expect to be talking about ship deaths. But it actually is kind
Yeah.
of. It is. It's as much for a lot of people. They are as much characters as the people, and um, particularly like the Enterprise is it's a big deal when they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the equivalent of character deaths in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Trying to think. Anybody else? Anything else? I did see we kind of breezed over it, but John did mention that he thought Admiral Forrest's death felt cheap.
Yeah.
Curious to see what you think when you get to it. I could take it or leave it. I love those episodes that it happens in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's kind of a throw in.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like it needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else come to mind for you? Like before you kind of start wrapping up?
I don't think so. I think we touched on all of the ones that I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
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 I mean, like I said, you could do a 9-hour show where you just like one by one go through these deaths and
analyze them
and give each one a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yeah.
But to me, that's more of a Twitter kind of thing. Like throw things out there and we'll talk there.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause there's a lot. There's just so many in all the shows.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts, I guess?
The discussion, like Bill said, doesn't have to stop here. Definitely come over to Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
There will be no Trek Live after party with Star Trek Online. But definitely this week, I'll definitely stream some Star Trek Online if you guys are looking for that. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
I am working on trying to get my computer looked at. So
yeah.
One of these days.
Yeah.
I hope to join.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to being able to.
Yeah.
But still a work in progress
Mm-hmm.
on my end.
Yeah.
We don't have a topic for next week yet. So if anybody has any ideas or they have anything they really want to see, feel free to throw it out to us and we'll certainly give it consideration. But we'll definitely announce ahead of time in the next few days, what we'll be talking about next week.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
We're open-minded to all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
What I do need to start doing, Dan, is every once in a while, like I don't think in every episode it happens, but like we did today, like I said, in the midst of a conversation, like something will come up and be like, that would be a whole episode. That could be a whole episode. I got to start writing them down
Well, I wrote down.
You wrote down? Okay, good. Yeah. That's somebody's. So that happens from time to time. So.
Yeah.
Trek comedy. We haven't touched on that yet.
We have not touched on it.
There is a Trek Ranks podcast. I don't know if you're aware of it. Check it out. It's a great podcast that did an episode on top 5 Star Trek comedy episodes. So there is content out there for that. We haven't done it, but it's something I'd be interested in at some point. There's a handful of them.
Yeah.
That I'd like to talk about. One of them being the one we talked about earlier today a little bit.
Watch over me.
Have you listened to any good Star Trek podcasts this week? Like other content out there on the internet? Just kind of throwing that out there.
There was I've been like an avid, like I've been listening to Primitive Culture and Warp 5. Those are kind of my main. And if there's a To the Journey, this is Trek FM, if you guys don't know. So I've just been on those two, and then To the Journey a little bit sprinkled in. So there's one Primitive Culture that they're just finishing up the um oh no, I'm blanking Shakespeare
Yeah.
in track, and I thought that was pretty interesting. It was a really deep cut, and I think, in my opinion, that's probably one of the more deep cut podcasts out there right
Yeah.
now for me. So definitely enjoying that.
Oh, that's good, Jordan.
Yeah. Um,
Good to hear.
Brandon Shea Matala, he has some interesting views, and he is also like, I don't know, he's funny that some of the comments he makes that are just so savage and so like, I don't know, such good banter, I think.
Hmm.
So I think there's definitely good chemistry there.
Hmm. 405's a good show. Brandon Shea Mittal is definitely one of my shout out favorite Star Trek podcasters. He's really good on Trek FM. He's on quite a few shows too.
Yeah.
I think he's on Standard
He's
Orbit,
not a
maybe.
big Beyond fan though,
No,
which hurts me. So, yeah,
he's one of the few out
yeah,
there. Most people are pretty on board with that.
yeah,
But yeah, I sign off on the Primitive Culture thing too. I think
yeah.
that's one of the better ones.
Hmm.
Like really interesting. Uh, I haven't listened to it in a while, but kind of similar to that is the what's the one about Trek philosophy? What's that called?
Oh, Metatrex.
Metatreks. I like
Yeah.
that when I listen to it for
Hmm.
the same kinds of things. It's from a different angle. Like they cover stuff that's not uh, traditionally covered on these kinds of podcasts. They come at it from a different. I think Metatreks is hosted by two people that have backgrounds in philosophy, so they have conversations that are fascinating and
Yeah.
totally different. And the Primitive Culture is very similar, where
Hmm.
they delve into history and um, literature and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
there's some really good stuff out there that I think I know I would. And we've talked about this in the past. Like we like the idea of like shining a light on some of that stuff here and
Hmm.
there because there's a lot of good content besides us
Hmm.
that people should definitely seek out um, if they haven't yet.
Yeah. Speaking of that, where we like to promote other
Yes.
shows. It's just, like Bill said, like we're in Star Trek. There's like a family aspect. There's also, I kind of like to think of it as Star Trek family on here. So
Definitely.
all one and the same. But definitely check out. Yeah, I'm just kind of rounding it off here.
Mhm.
Pacific 201. That
Yes.
that project is definitely go check out the teaser. Awesome. They're doing some great work over there. Super cool project.
Yeah.
So definitely support that if you can because it looks incredible.
It really does.
Yeah, and it's definitely like I'm writing down right now that we should do an episode on it
Hmm.
because that it's just so different and unique and a cool take on Trek. So
It
if you
is.
guys haven't yet, definitely check out Pacific 201.
I remember stumbling on that, like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago on YouTube, finding the YouTube channel for Pacific 201 before
Hmm.
he had done much, and kind of watching like his intro videos about it and talking about the concept and just being floored by like how well thought out it was and how
Hmm.
different,
Yeah.
how dedicated he was to, you know, doing things differently but sticking with canon and trying to make it fit. Like, I'm totally impressed by that project, and I would love to um, see how it would fare like without guidelines. Like, do the full, give it a full treatment.
Which is another episode we have written down about those guidelines.
Yes.
I could go off on those.
Yeah,
I'll just
that's
leave
a
it
sore
at
subject, Daniel.
that.
Um, it's a tough one, but yeah, that's definitely my favorite of the like uh,
Fan
in the
film.
works
Oh,
like
in the
fan
works.
film
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
Like there are a handful out there that I like a lot, but that one I really would love to see get its full like fair shake. I
Hmm.
love that it's like a new idea. It's not like um, I love Star Trek Continues, for example,
Yeah.
but that's you know telling stories within TOS. This is Pacific 201's like going to a different time that hasn't been previously explored, and creating new characters and new looks and new ships, and it's really ambitious. And I appreciate that he's the guy behind it. Eric Henry, I think his name is. I appreciate his passion and his dedication to like not just doing something easy. He's really going for it.
Yeah.
And, he deserves everybody's attention for sure. So yeah, we should definitely do that soon. We should do an episode that shines a light on them over there. Cool.
Yep.
Well, like Dan said earlier, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Hit us up on social media. We're always happy to talk. Topics we've covered already, this week, previous weeks, anything, what you're watching, we want to hear about it and we want to talk about it. So,
and like not even just about Trek, it could be about anything. Definitely.
Yeah. We're open, good guys.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you about whatever. Yep.
Well, guys, that's been it. That's been episode 18. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next weekend. See you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.